I want to make it very short because I realize that they're under time restraint, and I'm just going to actually answer the 4 questions campaign members put forward, and please bear. I'm going to change the orders if it's okay. What are the specific feminist legacies, if any, in each of the countries? How have women historically mobilized in these countries? How do feminist women's rights activists see their relationship between their plight with the broader civil rights movement, if any, in their respective countries? And 4, what role do women play in the social revolutions in the Middle East now? So I'm going to make it very brief and answer these questions specifically, and hopefully it would make some sense as we heard all the other great speakers talk about the same issues. In Iran specifically, there are legacies I'm going to talk about. I think these are my interpretations, and I'm sure there are more people here who might have different ideas. But the legacies of feminist work in Iran, the feminist legacies are multiple. One is the left-wing legacy, very much being anti-imperialist, and the other legacies are if you want to get anything done with regard to women's rights, you have to be close to power, and so it wasn't grassroots. You have to be close to Shah, have the Ministry of Women, which Iran, I think at the time, was the second country after Italy during the Pahlavi regime who had the Ministry of Women. And then the other legacies where it was very much hierarchical. Any feminist movement or attempt or effort in Iran was always very much hierarchical. It depended very much on age, rank, educational ranking, and so forth. And as you might say in the whole Middle East, it was very much, age played a very important role. So these were the legacies. In addition to the fact that, as you all know, Iran is a Shia country, and it had that Shia exceptionalism. When you think of it in the broader context of the region, it was always the one that was very different, and it always claimed that way. So the legacy was that it was not very much connected with others in the region. It definitely didn't experience the feminists in Iran, never did, and maybe up to now, it's very hard for them to experience the kind of connectivity that you see among Arab feminists. Some of it is language, but the others is also culture and thinking that you are very particular and very important and very different than everybody else in the region. Somebody talked about boogeyman. In Iran, the left legacy was that the imperialism, the American imperialism, was the boogeyman, always feared, and so that prohibited women to feminists to make the necessary links with the feminists in the other parts of the world, and especially in the Western. And so it was very much ideologically driven. So these are the legacies. To answer the second question, they have mobilized to get their rights through parliament, had Ministry of Women. The Pahlavi regime tried very much to have a quota system so that they could put women in the different ministry positions and in different key positions in the country, political positions, so that it would allow them to have a say in the political decision-making processes. But of course, it was not democratically elected women. It was always appointed by the people in the power and, most importantly, the ruling elite. After the revolution, I wanted to echo what Philip said about this was a life-changing experience with the campaign for me personally, and I think for a lot of other people in Iran working with and abroad, working with this 1 million signature campaign has really been a life-changing event. And I say that because it went against all those legacies, and it was empowering because it went against all those legacies that we as Iranian women faced and Iranian men. And so in that way, it was immensely liberatory in a very different way. It wasn't liberatory because we learned new ideologies, even though, the academia was filled with post-colonial theories, and we could have all been very excited about post-colonial theories. But the feminist movement on the ground in Iran and abroad understood the challenges that faced them, and even though they wanted to have, they kept these necessary transnational ties and understood their position within the region and abroad. They did that in a very organic manner, I think. The campaign, which is one way that women organized after the revolution, allowed women to engage in political decision-making processes in a very different way, very horizontal. So we didn't have that hierarchical structure that used to be in the Iranian politics and still is, even in the opposition politics as we see it, right? Some of you might agree with me. It allowed people to listen, and I think this listening, it's been interesting for me in terms of personally in my life and publicly, because I've realized that I've been looking for ideologies and for ways in which we can understand other people, know what's going on in their minds, and understand social problems, but we never listened. And I think left in general, and those who were also on the right, as you might say, in Iranian politics, they never listened. They all had very set ideas of what it is that they have to do and how it is that they would have to, what political decisions they have to make in order to move the country forward. Everybody had ideas, but nobody listened. Campaign made that possible. Campaign brought about the kind of ambience for people to listen to ordinary people, exceptional women, if they might think that about themselves, as well as to everybody. So it was a very horizontal playground for everyone. It completely dismantled, or tried to dismantle, the age hierarchy that exists as a legacy, and within the creative Iranian political atmosphere. And I think this intergenerational challenge that we faced in the campaign is something that is now global. I mean, I think if you look at the whole Middle East in general, all the images that you saw in that clip and so forth, they show young people in the streets. And there are, this is particularly important in the Middle East context, because here, we have what the last speaker, what Rima was saying about forming a global movement. Here, it's very easy for us to think outside of the age bracket. But when you go to the Middle East context, that's not always easy to do. And I think this, the campaign, for the very first time, crossed those boundaries and said, anybody who has these documents and anybody who believes in women's equality in the 3 documents that exist in the campaign can put a feet forward and become an active participant, an active member of the campaign, an active member of a women's movement. That was agency at work. That was agency as people learned it and experienced it and transmitted it to others. One of the other things that happened, I think, with the campaign in Iran, and now you see, after the 2009 presidential election, and you see that echo of it, and up to now, is, of course, the fact that women started being active not only on the ground, but also virtually. And they've been in the social networks, and this whole Twitter revolution, I'm not going to go that route, but we have Roger here who has done research on it actually, but the whole internet and the possibility of using internet that was also used in Iran for the very first time effectively and horizontally and democratically by campaign. I don't want to say the first time, but one of the first times. It allowed a public sphere that everybody wished for. Everybody is wishing in the Middle East to be included in a public sphere that has been excluding people of all different ranks and backgrounds and so forth. And for the very first time, these women were able to come into the social networks, use the internet, and allow this public sphere to broaden. And to answer the third question, how do feminist women's rights activists see the relationship between their plight and broader civil rights movement? I think what we're seeing in Iran and in the region is that a woman's question is part and parcel of any type of working democracy. I think you're right to be cautious about the future of Egypt, even though we might all feel very enthusiastic about what's happening in Egypt. But Iranian feminists, because of their legacies and because of their history and the experiences that they have, they know that there could very easily be backlash, just as the Iranian feminists experienced the backlash on March 8th in 1979. And it was a huge backlash, and nobody really anticipated that because they were living in a very enthusiastic, nice, revolutionary moment. I mean, I still remember when my parents talk about those revolutionary moments and the spring of freedom, their mood changes and their whole experience of life changes. And so that revolutionary moment is pregnant with a lot of things, but nobody knows what the revolutionary moment is pregnant with. Number 4, what role do women play in the social revolutions in the Middle East now? One of the roles is, as Faiza, the first speaker, said, is they show the outside world, obviously, that women in the Middle East are not passive. That's a very important role they play, but that's not all they play. I think they have shown that a level of civility has to be involved in any social revolution, in any social movement, in any part of the Middle East. I think that's the message that I'm getting, and I think it's apparent from these social revolutions and the role of women. They are saying, you know, they're present in the streets, but they are also not willing to be taken accounted for, and they want to have to raise the tolerance of the social movements in general, because any of these social movements that want to be that develop this tendency of being a little violent or extremist would then have to listen to the voices of women who are there in these countries to say that we need another level of civility, being able to listen to other people who are opposed to you and have tolerance for others. And I think this was very nicely echoed in our experience in the campaign, experience of Kuche be Kuche, which meant that people wrote about their experiences in the little blog in the campaign website, about how they went and talked to people and listened to their complaints and wanted to bring awareness, but also be open to other things that they might not have listened to up to that point. Well, they knew exactly what they wanted. There were 10 things that the campaigners wanted for 10 rights, 10 specific rights that they demanded. But they were also open to other things. And I think that's a lesson for all women in the Middle East. Now, I don't want to be what I just said Iranian women are, which they think that they start the whole experience. But the fact of the matter is they have been through 30 years of Islamic Republic, and they have been through some of the things that their counterparts in the other part of the Middle East are going through. And they know and appreciate and understand the importance of listening, the importance of being tolerant, not just in saying, not just in slogans, but in practice. And so I think the role that women play in the social revolutions now is very important. And it is important because they're now connected through social networks more than ever before, and it's not hierarchical. And they are also connected in other ways because there are their counterparts in the other Middle Eastern countries have had experiences with those extremes that people are usually afraid of, and they communicate these things to each other in this day and age, something that maybe wasn't very possible 32 years ago when the Iranian Revolution happened. And so I don't want to sound utopian about the role of social networks, but I think it does really revolutionize or allows different possibilities, as you were saying, for women's roles and women's participation that were just not possible before, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, or 2 decades ago. And that is women being able to talk to each other independent of already set institutions, be it UN or other things. So the women who want to be active and have an impact on social revolutions are now finding a way to be also members of the global public sphere. Even though they might have been deprived of their rights as citizens of their own country, they now find a different public sphere, a global public sphere in which they can become equal members and learn and understand other situations, other women's rights activists, and the challenges they face in their country. So they are now more and more interconnected, and nobody can really stop them from being so. So that's all I was going to say, and thank you very much. I wanted to thank all the campaign activists for inviting me, and I'm humbled. Thank you. And I will be there to answer any questions.